Step into the Fieldhouse, your front row seat to legendary victories and untold stories. Hey, I'm your host, Lance Leonard, breaking down sports from the inside out, along with co-host Jimmy Lackey. It's more than just a game. It's the Fieldhouse Podcast. So good to have you guys back. Welcome into the Fieldhouse Podcast. I'm your host, Lance Leonard, your co-host, Lance Leonard, with co-host Jimmy Lackey. Podcast number 4. What do you think's, what's your vibe on what we've been doing?
Oh, this is, like I told you, man, this isn't work. This is fun. But I'm gonna let our audience know right now some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. I'm only going to refer to these two guys as 182 and 183, and you'll understand why here in just a little bit.
Yeah, no, 182 is my favorite number. I don't know if 183 is your favorite.
Well, it's probably up there for sure.
Yeah. No, it's number 1. Number 13, by the way, is second, so I don't know where that comes from. But, hey, we have Jon Mark Beilue, and everybody knows him. Long-time writer at the Globe News, sports editor, columnist, has written books, and he's the what are we going to call you today as far as Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame?
I think chairman, maybe something like that.
He does a massive amount of work for it behind the scenes that nobody gets to see. But he is the 183rd selection into the Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame, and Jimmy introduced him.
Got to. The one year that he didn't MC the Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame ceremonies, they stuck me in there, and I let them know that there was 2 things that I was sure of. One, there's a God, and I'm not him, and I'm not Jon Mark. So I was going to do it for 1 year, and I went as fast as I possibly could to get us in and get us out, because that is a task.
Yeah, it's a major task.
I thought you might take it over full time, but you didn't want to.
No.
Okay.
But it is that was the year Lance and Jon Mark were both inducted, and it was fun for me to get to watch their faces throughout the event, and because I know it was a big deal. I took a picture of Lance from the back, big panoramic picture, and the sea of people that come to the event each year, and that was special for them, and deservedly so. So to get to work with these guys is a treasure for me.
Yeah, it's a big day for me as we reflect on this thing real quick. It's not about us, but having your family there. Like at the press conference, I cried like a little baby. I think I've analyzed it, Jon Mark. When we look at that wall in the center where you can see here at Kids Inc., you can see all the people. So I was looking at that wall, and you and I have probably attended more than half of those and talked about them. So I looked at that wall, and all of a sudden, it's a press conference. And I'm just crying. Saw my mom out there. I was like, whoa. That was way emotional. It hit me when the jacket came on. What were your thoughts?
I think it does for a lot of people, because what's unique about the Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame is it reflects back to where you first began. And I think it takes people by surprise, because this is where they first learned how to dribble a basketball or throw a football or run track, whatever it might be. And I remember a guy named Mark Hatley. One year, this is probably 20 years ago. Mark was at the time he was like in the front office of the Bears and the Packers. He was a very successful NFL executive, played football at Oklahoma State. Well, he was from Phillips. That's where he was all-state football player at Phillips. Well, he got up there and he realized, I don't have a hometown anymore, but this is kind of home.
Yeah.
And it just kind of hits people that your hometown, in essence, is honoring you. And that's, I think, the cool thing about the Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame. No, it's not like Zach Thomas is going in. No, it's not the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But it's just where you began.
Yeah.
And to be honored by the place where it started, or where you got most of your recognition or work, I think that's what's special.
Yeah, and it hits people at different stages. But I'm just going to say I did not shed a tear when I got up for that speech. I wasn't about to because of what happened the day before. But we have a big production coming up, our annual presentation, so to speak, of the Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame, and that will be in June. Jon Mark, do you want to tell everybody about what's going to happen?
Well, for just a little bit of a background, this will be the 66th annual, 65 years of the Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame. And, you think about how many good ideas have come and gone and have not lasted that long. But back in the late 50s, Put Powell, who Lance and I worked with for about 10 years, he and an advertising executive, John Heatland, decided we need to have our own Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame. And for the first several years, just one inductee.
One inductee.
The first one was Joe Fortenberry, the old captain of the 1936 Olympic basketball team from Happy. And since then, there's been a few more and a few more go in. And still, we'll induct numbers 202 through 207. And as I tell people, the first one, we go back to 36. Think about the thousands of athletes and coaches who have come through the Panhandle. Great. And we're just now up to a couple of hundred. So I think it's been intentionally elite, special. And we don't induct 15 in a class. We kind of keep it small to make it special. And every year is a special class, and we've got another one this year too.
Yeah, all walks of life, all athletes, some media. It's just really tells the story of the Texas Panhandle. I think that's one of the cool things.
Before we dive back into today's episode, let me share a fun fact with you. Did you know that the Fieldhouse Podcast is a production of the Kids Inc. Sports Network? That's right, Kids Inc. isn't just any sports organization. We have been a source for youth sports since 1945. From teaching kids the fundamentals of teamwork to fostering a love for the game, Kids Inc. is where champions are made. And here's the best part. As a listener of the Fieldhouse Podcast, you're a part of the Kids Inc. family too. Head over to kidsinc.org to learn more about current registrations, upcoming sports leagues, and how you can get involved in supporting your local young athletes. But wait, here's the kicker. Have you heard of the Rock Rose Sports Park Home Field Advantage campaign? It's a game changer for our community, aiming to provide state-of-the-art facilities for young athletes to train and compete. So if you believe in the power of sports to shape young lives and want to be a part of something truly special, check out kidsinc.org today and join us in making a difference. Together, let's continue to support the next generation of champions and to ensure that every child has the opportunity to succeed both on and off the field.
What do you get from the day, Jimmy?
Well, first and foremost, it's a privilege for our organization just to get to be a part of it. This was operated through the YMCA for many, many years. And David Jones contacted me a couple of years before the Y closed and just said, hey, would this be something you would be interested in doing? Should we have to make a change here? And I said, you just let me know. And we're always willing to help. I mean, Kids Inc. goes back as far as anybody. I mean, our organization started in 1945. And Mr. Farley was the fourth inductee,
Yes.
our founder. And Mr. Dykeman is in the Hall of Fame. Mr. Duggar's in the Hall of Fame. So, the three founders of our program are in that Hall of Fame. And so it's a natural tie. And then the work that Stacy does and Ashley and Maddie behind the scenes, because there's a tremendous amount of fact gathering that goes to getting everything ready to go, because we're not only doing 6 inductees this year, but you got all the athletes of the year, you got all the coaches of the year. And if there's anything that I would like to think we've done is we've spiced up the event a little bit. There's pictures, there's things that you can watch on the screens as you're there, and then Ashley built a website that has every bit of the history on there, and you can go to the kidsinc.org website and the Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame's full history all the way back to the first athletes of the year, the first coaches of the year, whatever sport that was when y'all started adding those different sports. All the history's there and the write-ups about each one of those athletes and coaches and all the special inductees and then the actual Hall of Fame inductees. And so, to get to be a part of that, I think it's a natural tie for Kids Inc., and we're thrilled to be a part of it. But people out there don't know how much work goes into it, and these ladies sitting off set do all of that. And so kudos to them, and they make y'all look really good when you get up there to do your parts at the ceremony, and it all goes real well.
I think Jon Mark can expound on this, but since Kids Inc. has come aboard, it's really upped the game of the event.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a new energy. It's a new way of looking at things. You kind of get into a rut with the, when the YMCA was a sponsor. We were doing it at Emerald College Ordway Auditorium, and chairs were hard, and it was kind of a confined space. Now we're at the Grand Plaza at the Civic Center. You can spread out. You have your own tables. The chairs are softer. That's just one example. You know, we got more video than we've ever had before. We've got a new house for the Hall of Fame where
Yes,
it's very special and just a different way of looking at it and a little more energy and creativity. I think it's like the 11th year now or something like that for Kids Inc. And perfect sponsors, Jimmy alluded to. I mean, it'd be interesting to go back and look at how many inductees got their start playing in Kids Inc. It's
That's what the cool thing is.
It would be pretty impressive, I think.
I think so,
Number
too.
200, Ziggy Hood.
Yep.
That was a really special speech and Kids Inc.
I put pads on Ziggy when he's in 4th grade at Eastridge Elementary School. So
that's awesome.
You know, but it's fun and just the history of sports in our area is rich, and like Jon Mark said, you know, we're just this deep into it.
Oh yeah. And I will say this: Jon Mark and I, when we were at the Amarillo Globe News, we used to do, you know, each sport. We would do a feature on all those athletes, and he can attest to this. When you interviewed people who are going into the Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame as a coach or an athlete, I mean, they were blown away usually in those interviews.
You know, you don't think as a coach or an athlete, hey, I want to get into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You don't do that. But when that invitation is issued and it's voted on by a committee, when that invitation is issued, I think all of a sudden it becomes very overwhelming in terms of gratitude and appreciation. But just, you know, just about every person that gets up there and is honored, they're thankful for all the ones that helped them to get there. And I think all of a sudden you realize, man, I was just I was fortunate to be around so many great people who helped me elevate my game to where I am today. And I think it really makes an impact on the inductees.
Here's the one thing I notice each year: we do a media time on Saturday here at the office where media can come in and get their sound bites and interview the inductees, and the families come, but they get their jackets on that Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And from the moment they get that jacket to when they walk in at the Civic Center the next day, their chest sticks out a little. You see what you're talking about in the flesh because they're proud, and it's a big deal for each one of those people. And it's every year it never ceases to amaze me how appreciative all the inductees are.
Yeah, no. Before we get talking about this year's, also, if you don't mind, Jimmy, explain if you come to Kids Inc. what you can see in that room.
Sure. We've got 3 meeting rooms out on the east end of our building, and one of those meeting rooms is the J.W. and Nell Faust room, and we have converted that into the Texas Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame, and we've got a big wall wrap with some of the previous inductees highlighting that wall going in, and then when you go into the actual room itself, there are 5 TV screens on the wall. Most people don't realize this, but they're interactive. So we could have the website up there and they could poke around and move around to the different things in the website. But all of the inductees' pictures and their story is on the wall in there. Yeah. And so it's like Jon Mark said, there's a permanent home now for the Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame, and deservedly so.
Oh, yeah.
Because back when we first started, one of the deals I made with David Jones, because I used to go to this event at Emerald College, and I made this deal with David Jones. I said, we'll do it if I can move it to the Civic Center, because I took Mr. Duggar more than once to the Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame, and bless those folks' heart, they got to go to the restroom. They got to go, and if they're stuck in the middle of a pew of those wooden chairs, you got to interrupt a few people to get out of there. And so that was my deal I made with David is, can we move this to the Civic Center, spread folks out? Stacy does a great job. United Supermarkets provides all of the snacks and all the hors d'oeuvres that we have at the event. So you got something to drink, a little something to snack on during the day. And so it makes it just a little more relaxed for everybody. They're not just sitting there in those tight chairs at Ordway Hall anymore.
No, it's a wonderful, wonderful day. It's a wonderful, wonderful weekend for the families and for the inductees.
Ready to dive deep into the heart of sports? Then tune in, because that is exactly what we are here for at the Fieldhouse Podcast. But the Fieldhouse Podcast isn't just about us talking sports. It's about all of us, our community, our passions, and our love for the game. That's why we're reaching out to any and all local businesses who want to get in early on the action. Whether you're a restaurant looking to pack the house on game day, or a fitness center wanting to help our listeners take their game to the next level, we want to partner with you. By sponsoring the Fieldhouse Podcast, you're not just getting your brand out there, you're becoming a part of our sports family. Reach out to us today at fieldhouse@kidsinc.org. That's KIDSINC.org.
Take us into this year's inductees. What do you think the theme's going to be?
Well, for the inductees, you say this every year. It's a real special class. It's a diverse group. 6, which is our largest class ever. Normally we're about 4 or 5, but we're 6 this year. I'll probably go back to 4 or 5 next year. But we have 6 candidates that very diverse. 202 will be Laura Schweitzer, who's from McLean. Grew up, played basketball at Wayland in the early 60s. We have a veterans selection, which means you're selected if your accomplishments were more than 50 years ago.
Right.
And so, but most of these veterans would get in regardless, but it just helps us to kind of honor some of the older folks. And she was a 3-time All-American at Wayland in the early 60s, played on an AAU national championship team, played on the Pan American team, played on a team that toured Russia in the height of the Cold War. And then she went on to a long career at Southwest Oklahoma State and Weatherford, basketball coach and AD. She passed away in 2017, so she'll have one of her colleagues except for her. Number 203 is Don Reeves from Wheeler. We have a real theme this year, Lance and Jimmy. So many of these inductees are all from small towns.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mobeedy, Wheeler, McLean. It just shows you big things can come from small towns. But Don's from Wheeler. He and his twin brother Ron were Terrors and Wheeler Mustangs in the 60s. Both signed with Tech, could have gone anywhere, and they signed with Texas Tech. Don sort of elevated himself and became a 3-time starter at nose guard, 2-time All-Southwest Conference, All-American, second team his senior year, and then played 7 seasons with the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
One of the longer tenures of NFL playing time in our area. And if you ever have sports Jeopardy question, he'll be who replaced Dick Butkus as middle linebacker for the Bears? It was Don Reeves.
Yeah.
And so Don's 203, I believe.
Can I tell you something about Don?
Yeah.
So Don's wife, Sammy.
That's right. Go ahead. You have a personal connection.
So my friends in Dumas, if you remember Sammy Thompson, Sammy babysat me when I was a kid and was one of my dad's favorite students, and that's Don's wife. And so Sammy and I have been talking throughout this whole time and getting reacquainted and having an opportunity to visit. I used to play a little softball with Don back in the day too.
Could he play softball?
Oh, he could hit a ball farther than anybody you ever saw. But that's my claim to fame with Don.
Yeah. I like it. I like
it.
Sammy's class act.
Dick Butkus.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
And then we have, I might be getting confused, 204 and 205. I think 204 is Tom Dowdy. Probably, I'll just put it this way. He's probably certainly the most decorated and maybe the best amateur. I'll put amateur golfer from the Panhandle. He's won over 40 local tournaments. He's won some state tournaments, a number of those. He's been in the U.S. Senior Open and probably over about a 30-year period, he was about as dominant a golfer as you could have up in the area. He's originally from Bay City, but moved here in 1980, and Emerald's been his home for over 40 years. Cheryl Estes will be 205. Cheryl is from Mobeedy, and not old Mobeedy, new Mobeedy. And, she first came on the scene, I think, she was 28 years old and became the head coach at Wayland Baptist. Imagine that. She had 1 year as a high school head coach. It was actually here for a camp, Bob Schneider's camp, and they said, hey, Wayland's interviewing for coaches. I think they want to interview you. She didn't even have any clothes to interview. She just came in camp stuff, and so she had to go buy some interview clothes and got the job. And was there for 6 years, took Wayland to the NAIA National Tournament 5 times, was runner-up once. Then she becomes the head coach of the Colorado Explosion of the Women's Professional American Basketball League. The ABL and the WNBA started the same year. And she was there for the 2 years of existence, got them to the playoffs, ends up becoming the head coach, startup program at A&M Corpus Christi, and did really well there for 4 or 5 years, and has since got out of coaching and is now a very successful entrepreneur, if you will. And so she's 205, and then we ended up.
She played at WT
She
too.
played
right?
at WT.
I went
She
to college
played
with Cheryl.
Yeah.
she played. She played with under Bob Schneider and coached for 2 years under Joe Lombard. So
Yeah.
that's an education right there, you know. And she credits both of them greatly with her coaching philosophy.
Scrappy player.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Then 206 and 7. 206, Zach Thomas. What can you say? I mean, I don't think many would argue probably the greatest football player from the Texas Panhandle. Period. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
But also small town, White Deer, Pampa.
Pampa, yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yeah. And, people underestimated him his whole life, and that just was fuel. As you know, Lance, that's fuel to the fire. Lance can tell you stories about Zach would get stuff that would just motivate him. This guy's slow. He can't move. You know, these other guys are better, and it would just infuriate him, and it was just fuel to the fire.
Yeah, and the great story is a 5th round draft pick, obviously, Jimmy Johnson throws him in as a starter his rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
And had a chance to visit shortly with Jimmy Johnson, and he just said, look, Zach, it was no doubt. It's not like it was a hard decision. He was just a great player. Everybody saw it, even though maybe the outside world didn't see it. He says, I get credit for this big decision. It wasn't really a big decision.
Yeah. And
I will say this, Jon Mark, he played third base for Pampa.
That's what I'm about to say, the same
Yeah. And he wasn't very good, okay? But it was Zach Thomas, okay? Good athlete. And the story goes, one hopper, the fields back then weren't so great, right off his head. And his brother, as only older brothers can do, nicknamed him Head because his head was so big. Fred Flintstone, they called him Freddie Flintstone, you know what I mean? But right off his head, just picked it up. The coach told me threw him out. Rod Porter was the coach. Went back and played. Most guys would be coming to the dugout, Coach, get me out of here, things like that. And he just shrugged it off, you know what I mean?
Yeah, his dad tells a story. They're out there farm. Zach was like about 2 or 3 in diapers, just walking around. And Steve gets in the pickup, backing it up, and just barely had it in gear. And here's a little thump. Well, he stops it, takes it out of gear, goes back out, and he backed into Zach. Well, Zach just kind of, he's 2 or 3, he just brushes himself off and keeps on going, and it doesn't, the pickup, I think, had to go get some body work on it, but that was just the way.
A broken arm, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and Zach was 4 or 5 time All-Pro. He was on the all-decade team of the early 2000s. I mean, he's as good a linebacker as there was in the NFL, and he got his start at White Deer and at Pampa.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's something all the area can feel proud
Yeah,
about.
and anybody behind the scenes works so hard studying the opposition, little things, this and that, and that's one of the reasons. He knew the play before it was called because that's the advantage he told me he had to have or he wouldn't have made it.
Preparation for the ceremonies, I was looking some stuff up, and Peyton Manning said that he hated playing Zach Thomas worse than any player because Zach was over there calling out their plays.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a student of the game, and Lance, you heard his speech in person.
Oh, yeah,
at Canton.
It was awesome.
He was crediting Max Plunk, their defensive coordinator at Pampa, and Dennis Cavalier for teaching him how to read linemen.
Yeah.
And he used that his whole life.
Yeah. He had that one read that he used his whole life. And what's crazy, Jon Mark, now with RPI, run pass option RPO, that it wouldn't work. Okay. I mean, he knows that, but up till that time, this one advice he took as a freshman linebacker at Pampa that he used all the way through his NFL career. So, and he's not afraid to give people credit, where it's due. No. So, yeah, great player. Probably the greatest football player in the Texas Panhandle history.
And then 207 is Leslie Broadhurst,
Wow.
who just retired at Randall. And I think, without belaboring it, we all know Coach Broadhurst's story and how it's kind of, well, first of all, his career. I mean, I think he's the third all-time winningest boys coach up here in Panhandle history. And the 36 years it ran, he's the only coach. Remember they used to talk about Tom Landry was the only coach the Cowboys ever had. It's kind of the same with Coach Broadhurst, the only head basketball coach Randall has had. And, what a career. And, we all know what he had to deal with health-wise this year, and he is retired. But he will be number 207, and I'm telling you, you need to be there. You need to be here for that one, if nothing else. I mean, everybody there. We have a lot of people being honored. Coach Broadhurst will be the last one, and you need to be here for that.
Yeah, no, that's well said. We had him sitting right where you're sitting right now.
Yeah.
Jimmy?
Well, I've known Leslie a long time, and his humor is second to none.
Yeah.
He can keep things pretty gravitated through any conversation until he started talking about his kids and going down the hall and all 36 teams in the hallway and all the pictures, individual and team pictures. And he said he had just the week before gone down to make sure he knew the names of every one of those kids. And he got real emotional about that. And that just goes to the immense of being a coach and being a leader of men or leader of women in the coaching world, and what those kids really do mean to those coaches. And you saw it firsthand while he sat right there talking about that. And I'm sure a little bit of that will come out on Hall of Fame Day, but there'll also be a little humor in it too, because that's just Leslie.
Mm-hmm.
And he can light up a room, and I'm thrilled for him as a friend for him to get to go into. So I'm really excited for him.
That will be a neat time, and that will end the ceremony. That'll be the last inductee. Yeah. And of course, it's the Hall of Fame is always a combination of the past and the present. We honor all the athletes of the year, coaches of the year. We have some special awards, so you don't have to be a historian of sports in the Panhandle to appreciate the inductees. You can just be a fan of them now, and you're going to know so many names. And it'd probably be interesting to see how many coaches and athletes of the year are now in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, we ought to do a little research on that. But and to Jon Mark's point, what's cool about that is you kind of experience the whole year, and then it's all in one ceremony that you see what happened. And it's quite amazing the accomplishments that occur from September to May. It's just amazing year in and year out what the Panhandle comes up with our coaches and our players.
Well, the book, if anybody wanted to see it, that book of nominees is this thick, literally, and they'll never all get in. But I would be willing to bet that a big subset of them have been a coach or athlete of the year before, or have received some special award. But it goes back to Jon Mark's original comment. They've kept it special. And, how many years we're into this now, and you've only got 207 inductees. That's special. And so I think that's what makes it even more so for each individual when they get a chance to go up there and speak to it. Let's take a real quick break. We'll come back here on the Fieldhouse Podcast, a production of the Kids Inc. Network.
Before we dive back into the next segment, we would like to introduce the group that has contributed to the production of the Fieldhouse Podcast, Rogers Lead WT.
This year's lead scholars are Kyle Brown, Cade Cox, Morgan Ellerton, and Jenna Hurd, and Riley Miller. We partnered with Kids Inc. to create a podcast that would reach the sports community and make an impact on the community for years to come.
Rogers Lead WT is a 2-year leadership program at West Texas A&M University that select college students, develop their leadership skills, and gives them the opportunities that every college student should take advantage of.
The core values of Rogers Lead WT are integrity, service, excellence, teamwork, and dreaming big. And every lead scholar gets the opportunity to enhance these qualities as they develop into the leaders of the next generation.
And with that, we would like to thank the Kids Inc. staff and Jimmy for allowing us to be part of this amazing production. Now with that, back to the Fieldhouse Podcast.
Hey, welcome back into the Fieldhouse Podcast. I'm your host, Lance Lunnert. We got Jimmy Lackey, co-host here, Jon Mark Beilue. We've been talking about the Panhandle Sports Hall of Fame, near and dear to our three hearts, but to so many others who have have their names in that special place. Jon Mark, we have another ceremony coming up in June. If you don't mind, tell us the date and where it's going to be and what time and things like that.
Well, we're taping this, I guess, on May 8th, so it's 1 month and a day from today. It'd be June 9th. It's a Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock at the Civic Center Grand Plaza, free of charge. Just show up. There'll be some snacks and something to drink, and you'll have a table that'll be comfortable for you. And but it's always been free. It used to be in February, but we've moved it now to June, which is kind of a better time, I think, to kind of wrap up the sports year. So that Sunday will be a special time. It's second Sunday in June is kind of going to be. It's been the time the last few years, and I think it will remain that way. And it puts people like Stacy under the gun. Shout out to her. But,
yes, shout out to all of them.
Because we have so many spring sports to get coaches and athletes of the year that are just concluding, just like a few weeks before. And, you try to give them as much time as possible. Hey, you're going to be honored in 2 weeks. Can you be there? Yeah. As opposed to football when you make that decision in December. But they do a great job, and it's always a special time. Again, if you're a fan of sports, or if you remember these names, at 2 o'clock on June the 9th, it'll be a special time.
Yeah, it's always a special day. A lot of great comments. Jon Mark does an amazing job as the master of ceremonies. And you got any last thing to say, Jimmy?
No, I just echo what he said. Make sure that everybody understands, this is free of charge. How many events do you ever get to go to anymore? You don't have to pay anything to come other than your own gas money and your own time. And to come spend a couple hours with us to honor these athletes and these coaches and the inductees is worth your time, I promise you. If you're interested in sports, it's worth your time.
I've had people ask before, where do I get tickets?
Yeah.
You don't.
You
just show up. You just show up, and we're honored by your presence. We really are.
Yeah, we really are. It's an amazing day. Put it on your calendar. We would love to see you out there. Hey, let's hop out of here, guys. Thanks a lot for your time today, Jon Mark. Jimmy, as always. Hey, this was the Fieldhouse Podcast. We'll see you soon.